Well, let's talk about God, gender, and transgender. I'm going to be sharing things that I'm pretty confident some of this you've probably never heard before, and others you've been absorbing because you live in the culture, especially the transgender stuff. But let's talk first about gender and what it has to do with God. Gender is God's good creation. He thought it up. We see it at the very beginning of the Bible, at the very beginning of creation, Genesis 1:27. So God created mankind in his own image. In the image of God, he created them, male and female, he created them. It's interesting how repetitive it is. You would think God knew that in 2026, we would need to be talking about gender as God's creation. The thing is, where it says male and female, he created them, this is what makes it abundantly clear there are only two genders, male and female. Every cell of our bodies is stamped either XX for female or XY for male. Every cell is stamped with our gender. That's why it's not changeable. And gender comes from God himself. He is the headwaters of gender. Have you ever heard that phrase before, that word headwaters? Do you know what it is?
I know what it is. I haven't heard it used before.
Yeah, I bet not.
I know what it is, yeah.
What flows out of headwaters?
Water. Streams.
Water. What?
Like streams. Rivers.
Streams that become rivers.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, this is the headwaters. This picture right here is the headwaters of the Colorado River that starts with a spring in the Rocky Mountains. All rivers start with headwaters. So all this, I mean, the massive Nile, the Mississippi, all start from the headwaters. Gender is like that. It starts with a single place, which is the heart of God. Both masculinity and femininity flow from him. But God is not male, God is not female, God is beyond gender. He created patterns of masculinity and femininity. It's all from him. Everything that's wonderful and good about masculine and femininity comes from God himself. So let's talk first about masculinity. The glory of masculinity, I believe, is strength in its various forms. Men image the strength of God, and I love Proverbs 20:29 that says, the glory of young men is their strength, which is why when we need to move stuff, we come get you. You know, as opposed to, well, let's go find some girls. They can talk while they move stuff. No, let's go get some guys who are strong. So strength is a hugely important part of masculinity, but the other essence of masculinity is to protect and provide. Those are two massive things. That's why fathers are the head of the home. They protect and they provide. And masculinity reflects the strong father heart of God. God uses his strength to love us by doing two things, protecting and providing for us. So that's the big picture of masculinity. Femininity, the glory of femininity is beauty in various forms. First of all, we display it. We create it as women image the beauty of God. You might not have ever thought of God as a beautiful God, but that's how the Bible describes him. Isaiah 33:17, your eyes will see the King in his beauty. It's not just women that are beautiful. God is as well. The essence of femininity is to respond and to nurture. And just as there's a father heart of God, I believe there's a mother heart of God. Otherwise, where would we as women get our mothering from, if not from God? So there's a mother heart of God that, and he displays the femininity that's inherent within his mother heart by loving us, by responding to us and nurturing us. And you can imagine, think of the women you know, not necessarily other teenage girls right now, but grown women, responding to you, nurturing you, your moms, hopefully. That's the essence of who they are as women. Let's talk about why male and female matters, because there are scriptural patterns that teach us God's plan for gender and sexuality. Here's a different way of looking at God's creation in Genesis 1, that in the process of creating, God separates things and then he unifies things. You see this balance. First he separates the light from the darkness, and then he creates one day. And then he separates the waters above the vault where the birds fly from the waters below the vault, the ones on the ocean, the oceans and lakes on the land. And then out of that separation, he creates another new day. And then he separates the land from the seas, and he creates one new day. And he separates from the day from the night by creating the sun and the moon and the stars. And he creates the fourth day. There's this separating and then unifying. And we're going to see this happen with people in Genesis 2, the creation account. When he makes humans, male and female, first thing he does after making Adam, in the process of making Eve from Adam, is that he separates. We say he takes a rib out of the woman. Actually, if you look at the Hebrew, it's not just a rib, it's a side. It could be that there was some massive chunk of Adam that he pulled away and created Eve from him. We don't know exactly.
Imagine waking up, waking up,
and like half of you is missing.
Could it also still just have been a rib?
I'm sorry?
Could it just have been a rib? Is
Possibly.
that a possibility? Okay.
We really don't know, because nothing like this has ever happened before or since.
And also, who would have wrote it down in the moment?
Moses.
Moses.
Oh, in the moment, no, but Moses, we think, wrote Genesis hundreds of years later. So
yeah, I'm just saying that's a big time.
there is a big time gap there, so we don't know.
Have an extra rib?
No.
Or am I?
You've probably heard that. It's an old wives' tale.
And men
but
don't have a missing rib. We both have pairs of ribs.
We're fine now.
yeah, we're good. We're good.
All good.
They grew back.
But the thing I want you to take away is, however God did this, he separates Adam from one body into two bodies, fashions part of him into a woman, and then brings them back together and says the two shall become one flesh. So you got that separation and then unifying. That's part of the creation pattern. As a matter of fact, Paul quotes from Moses in Ephesians 5, "For this reason, a man will leave his father and mother," there's that separation, "and be united to his wife," there's the uniting, "and the two will become one flesh." This is a profound mystery, but I'm talking about Christ and the church. So sex, which is the one flesh union of husband and wife, is an earthbound illustration of the union of the Lamb, who is Jesus, the Son, and his bride, who is the church. So that's why sex is so important. It's a picture of this union between Christ and the church. It's so much more than a messy handshake. So let's talk about the biology of sex and reproduction. Our bodies tell a story about God's design and intentionality for our sexuality. So God loves us first. His love always starts with God, and then people love each other. And in the man's body, think about the biology of sex. He offers his love and pours it out into his wife. The woman's body is built to receive the man's body and receive the love that he's pouring out. Think about how babies are created. The husband gives seed and he inseminates his wife's body. The wife receives the seed and carries the life that's created. This biology of sex and reproduction is not just a mechanical thing of this is how sex works and how babies are made. It's a picture of something spiritual. So reproductive systems only function together like a lock and a key. If you separate men and women all together, and like if you put literally all men on Mars and all women on Venus, a man's body doesn't make any sense by itself. It only makes sense in the context of a woman's body, because it's like a lock and a key. Neither one of them makes any sense apart from when you put them together. So when you see the male and female biology, how the pieces fit, how the parts fit, when you see them in light of each other, their sexual differences reveal God's plan. Man and woman were meant to be a gift to each other. The reason I talk about all this stuff is to lay the foundation for why the whole transgender thing is nuts. It doesn't make any sense, because God's creation of male and female, both physically and emotionally and spiritually, it only makes sense for male and female to come together. So the whole transgender thing doesn't make any sense in view of how God created us. So there are two big purposes for the reproduction systems and why they only function like a lock and a key. That good old theological word, the teleological aspect. Yes, I mean, that's talking about the purpose and design. Why did God decide to make male and female rather than rather than what? What?
I said male and male.
Male and male, or female and female, because he wants us to fit back together again, where the two, having been separated, become one again. So that purpose and design, they're lock and a key, they're meant to fit together. But also there's a theological reason that God made us male and female. He wants union with us. The separate comes together with union. There's a picture going on, and sex is an illustration. So we need to talk about why sex is spiritual. In our bodies, we carry the story of something torn apart, something separated, and then put back together again. That points us to the union that God has with us, because sin separates us from God, right? And Jesus' redemption allows us to come back together again. So when we trust in Christ and we say yes, in the same way that, like, when a man asks a woman to marry her and marry him, and she says yes, and they get married, and then they have sex and they create a new life, Jesus literally comes into our lives and plants his spiritual seed in us so we can bear spiritual fruit. The fruit of the Spirit is Christ-likeness. We are to bear fruit. And so there's this, sex is a picture of something spiritual. That's why any expressions of sexuality, apart from one man and one woman in a committed covenantal marriage relationship, anything short of that is sinful. It's not God's intention. These sinful expressions of sexuality, apart from God's plan, fall short of the glory of God. They fall short of God's intention for us in our bodies and his design and intention for sexuality. That's why it's sin. So let's talk about identity, which is a big thing, obviously, in the culture today. This morning I told Dr. Bohlin I had seen this video of a cop pulling a woman over, and she was in the HOV lane, and she's driving, and her German Shepherd is sitting in the passenger seat, and he goes, "You're in an HOV lane. You can't have just one person in the car." And she says, "This is my dog. She identifies as a person. There are two persons in our car." He said, "You have a dog." She says, "But she identifies as a person." And that's our whole identity. We make up, this is how I think I am. Our identity in our culture has become so convoluted. So let's talk about identity. In our current culture, identity is grounded not in who God makes us to be, not in his image, but in our feelings and attractions. And so that's not a very good foundation for who we really are, because feelings and attractions change. As you well know, something that sounded real good yesterday doesn't sound so great today. So Jesus asked that interesting question of his disciples: who do you say that I am? Who do other people say that I am? It's a great question, and the culture encourages us to look in the mirror and look at our reflection and go, who do I say that I am? Looking into ourselves, into our own hearts. But how can we possibly know who we really are unless we grasp the truth that God made us in his image? If we want to know who we are, we need to look at the one whose image we're made in. We need to look at him to see who he is and how he is, so we can know who we are, because we're his reflection. So ultimately, when it comes to identity, how do you identify? How do you see yourself? We need to go to God and ask him, hey God, who do you say I am? And this is the foundational question that we need to keep in mind when it comes to issues of gender and transgender. Who do you say I am, God? Because there's this profound brokenness when it comes to gender in our culture. Two different kinds. You remember these semicircles from the worldview talk at the beginning of the year, where reality is one big circle that's divided in half, but there's intersection between the top and the bottom. But in our culture, we've divided the one half of the circle is the person. Who do you feel like inside? And the other half is a body. And you notice they don't even touch, much less intersect. So our culture says, well, I may be one way in my body on the outside, but I'm somebody very different on the inside. It's totally separated. And the follow-up to that is, in our culture, we've said sex and gender are two different things. Your biological sex is what your body says, but your gender, how do you feel about yourself? Do you feel more masculine or more feminine?
I feel very Walmart bag-esque.
You feel what?
Walmart bag-esque. I identify as a Walmart bag.
It's a joke. One of us stupid, what gender do you identify as? And the option was Walmart bag.
It's like an other, and you just type in Walmart bag.
I have a question.
I have an answer.
So
make it up.
What in the case of people who are hermaphrodite, when it's a mutation, when neither male or female reproductive organs generate, what do we?
What do we do?
Yeah.
That's such a good question.
I haven't had a really good answer, and I know a lot of people say, "Oh, I'm hermaphrodite," and even though that's likely not true.
Right.
It's
Well,
super rare.
so first of all, you're right. You need to remember that it's super, super, super rare. And what it means is there's a brokenness. There was an anomaly, a mutation, okay, when they were in the womb. And it means that neither of the male nor the female reproductive organs developed as they should. But what's really interesting about this is called, the new phrase is intersex, okay? And what intersex people will tell you is if you just let them grow up and you don't even talk about their genitals, they will almost always have a very clear understanding that I'm a boy or I'm a girl. And so what it is I'm a boy or I'm a girl and I have broken reproductive systems. And so this is a completely separate issue from the transgender issue, which is I have a completely intact, I'm either biologically male or biologically female, but I'm pretending that I'm the opposite sex. Very different situation.
Do their cells still have like the XY or the XX?
Often there's something, the cells are marked differently. So like there'll be a mutation, there'll be an extra chromosome, or
It's an XXY or XYY.
Mm-hmm. And there's a variety of those.
Interesting.
And so usually they can identify which chromosome is messed up. So in the last Olympics, there was I can't remember, it was an African boxer who boxed as a woman, but in the last 2 weeks, this person actually admitted that he has the SRY gene, which is on the Y chromosome, meaning he's genetically and biologically a male. He had testosterone in his system when he was going through puberty. He had no business boxing women because he has the body of a man, even if he doesn't have the outward genitals of a man. All the rest of him is male, and so he had all the advantages of maleness, and that was an SRY situation, which is like a sex something or other Y chromosome. But good question, Colin. Okay, let's talk about the delusion of transgender. That's what for the rest of our time, we'll be talking about this issue, which has blown up in our culture in the last 10 years. So let's talk first about the lies you hear in our culture about transgender. First is that people can be born into the wrong body. No, they can't. Any more than a human being can be actually a cat, but born into a human body by mistake. That is a thinking disorder. It's not a biological problem that needs to be fixed. And people can say it all they want, it doesn't make it true. Interestingly, and they've done the studies on this, historically they know that if you've got kids who are uncomfortable in their, it's like it was mainly little boys that thought they wanted to be girls, or they felt like they were more girls. If you let them just grow up and you let puberty do its thing in the body, which resets everything, there's this profound change that happens hormonally in your body at puberty. It almost always resets the not feeling right inside, and they grow into an awareness that it's okay to be who I am. They just needed to go through puberty. Something happens during puberty where you just get used to it. It's like, this is my body. Okay, I accept it. If you just leave them alone and let them finish growing up, it works out okay. The second lie, people really are the gender that they prefer to be. I identify as a woman. Well, feelings don't determine reality. They never have, they never will. Objective reality is what is real and true.
Logic on top, baby.
Huh?
Logic on top.
There you go. Transgender ideology elevates feelings above what is objectively true, which is you are either male or female. We had our church, you have to re-up. Well, you guys know this. City Bridge is the same as Watermark. You have to re-up at the beginning of every year if you're a member. Are you fully in as a devoted follower of Christ? And one of the first questions they ask is, are you male or female? There are no other options. Those are only two, and that's based on Genesis 1:27. That is what is objectively true. So what is driving so much of the transgender crazy is the social contagion, where people who don't have smartphones and who are not online don't struggle for the most part this way. So much of it is on TikTok and Tumblr, where people get into transgender spaces and they're hearing each other and they go, I don't like my body. It means I'm trans. Or they say, I don't like my body, I'm not comfortable with it. And other people say, that means you're trans. And oh, well, you must know me better than I know myself. There are massive numbers of teen girls identifying as trans. And so much of it, girls are so much more open to listening to what other people have to say about them, way more so than boys. They're very vulnerable that way.
Tumblr has to be like from like 2012. No one uses that anymore.
What's about 2012?
I said Tumblr has to be so
Oh.
old. People like don't use that much anymore.
Yeah.
They're like under 18.
I went and was looking that up yesterday. But historically, that's what pushed so much of this forward. Now it's TikTok because everybody lives there, right? So there's this outstanding book by Abigail Schreier called Irreversible Damage, The Transgender Craze Seducing Our Daughters. And she writes, the teen girls susceptible to this social contagion are the same high anxiety, depressive girls who struggle socially in adolescence and tend to hate their bodies. Girls are just prone to this, especially now in the age of the internet and smartphones and people talking to each other in devices that may as well be stitched into their skin. You know, they're on it all the time, and they're getting all their information mediated through what's on their phone. And girls are very susceptible to this, way more so than guys.
And it also doesn't help that there's a lack of parenting going on a lot, because that just leaves them feeling uneasy going to their parents, and parents aren't talking to them, so that thinks, if they're not talking to me, I'm going to go to someone else, and that someone else most likely going to brainwash them or say, oh, it's perfectly fine, you don't feel like a girl, you can be a man all you want, it's going to be so brave, it's amazing, I love how you're realizing it and stuff like that. And so that's also a big issue with transgenderism, because there's no parenting going on, and also a lack of parents disciplining.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like another main issue is people trying to grow up too early.
Very good point. Yeah.
Like, I'm seeing these 12, 11, 10, 12, 13-year-olds dating. I'm like, what are you doing, bro? Just enjoy the childhood. It's so much fun, trust me.
That's it. Well, and think about, what do you know about the prefrontal cortex? You know, that's the front part of your brain that controls like what you can see way down the road, and
don't have one.
thinking through, okay, if I do this today, what effect is it going to have months and years from now? Well, that part of your brain doesn't develop till age 25, which rental cars and car insurance people figured out a long time ago, because you know your driving insurance right now is sky high because of how old you are. You hit 25 and the rates drop, because people under 25, especially guys, are far more risk takers. They're not thinking clearly long term. So when kids, like you're saying, Zach, 12 and 13-year-olds are, you know, pretending to be grown-ups, and their brains aren't even finished gelling for another 12 or 13 years. That's a scary big amount of time.
And for men, isn't it like usually for us like 25 to 28 years?
No, it's 25.
Around that time?
25.
No,
I
I'm
think
pretty sure 25 is for the female and
It's
average.
26. Female is like 19 or 20.
For insurance?
No, like
development, frontal lobe.
The frontal
Yeah.
Well, I understand it's 25 for both.
Yeah, it's 25.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Can I look it up?
Sure.
Okay.
Okay, why does
Yeah.
everybody always say men mature
I think it is
last?
Yeah.
I think.
Well, different
wasn't it?
aspects. For example, girls start talking earlier. Girls are relationally more advanced than boys. You know, there are
Our
different
relationships
aspects
are
of that.
Caveman.
That's so bad.
Okay, so it says
Absolute caveman.
men usually development mid to late 20s, usually around age 25 to 27. Now let's see what woman is.
Okay.
Around age 25.
Okay. So about the same.
Yes.
Well, let's look at the third lie about transgenderism, which is trans women are women. This is a flat out lie. Just because you claim to be a woman doesn't make you a woman. People with XY chromosomes are male. Period. End of discussion. Only people who possess female biology are female. And they're the only ones who get to claim to be a woman. What's really going on is you've got people who are taller, bigger, stronger, deeper voices saying, I am a woman, I am a trans woman, you must call me she, her. But they possess larger lung capacity, their bones are longer and stronger, their metabolism is faster and higher, they have greater strength and speed than females, so they have a physical advantage over females. That's why sports, almost all of them, have been separated by gender, because it's an unfair competition to have one gender with one sex who is so much more able to produce speed and strength and all the things than women. So people who are born male, who can only father babies and never give birth to them, they're not women. It doesn't matter how long and loud they cry and yell. They are not women. It's a lie.
Here's this story about this trans person and slimming, I think, was, forget her name, but she's really frustrated about it because this person was lapping her in, like, slim meats and stuff like that. And so, like, oh, we never heard of this girl, who was she, da-da-da, because he had a lot of surgery done, so it's extremely hard to tell, like, at the time. And so they searched him up and searched up the name, and they realized that he transferred from male sports to women's sports, and he was horrible in the male division.
Oh, I remember that.
And so eventually she tied with him in the Olympics or something, and they chose to give the gold medal to the trans person solely because of that.
Right.
And so it's also demeaning to a woman.
Oh, it's very much so. Yeah, and so who made the biggest splash in terms of the news was a guy named William Thomas, who was a mediocre male swimmer, and then he declared, "Now call me Leah Thomas. I'm now a woman."
I think that's what I said.
That's probably what you're talking about. Yes. And finally, within the last year, it was determined that Leah Thomas is not allowed to swim in the Olympics as a woman because he's a guy.
China was like, "This is weird, man."
Yeah.
China don't put up with that.
Oh man, that's crazy. Okay, so here's another lie. Mental health issues and autism have nothing to do with transgender.
That's me for real.
It is a huge problem because those who declare themselves to be transgender usually have a very high percentage of depression and anxiety, which honestly, try to find any group of people where the majority of them don't struggle with depression and anxiety, right? Self-harm, they're isolating if they identify as trans. And so many people, a much, much higher percentage, are on the autism spectrum. So that's an issue in the brain. People have a difficulty catching like social cues and relational cues, and they already feel a lack of connection with other people. They don't know how to just come in and have social connection with others, and so they're already feeling disconnected. Oh, I know, it must be because I'm trans. No, it's not because you're trans. It's because you have autism and you've got some struggles that make life harder for you. The percentage of those with autism is unbelievably high of those who identify as trans. So Dr. Miriam Grossman is a psychiatrist and a therapist, and she wrote, for those therapists, those gender ideologues, those who are buying into the gender ideology, the parents are the problem. It's not the child's social anxiety or autism or irrational thinking or social media addiction. No. The issue is mom and dad's refusal to embrace their teen's 2-week-old identity and allow a kid to run the show. And she was pointing out, you could have a kid who's 14 that, you know, for only 2 weeks has been saying, Mom, Dad, I'm transgender. You need to help me transition. So you need to don't call me by my birth name. You need to call me by this new name. And you have to, if she's a girl, you have to cut my hair, and you have to get me boys' clothes, and you have to do all these things. I'm going to tell you what to do, and I want you to do what I want you to do.
As someone who's now matured a little bit, I was an idiot at 14.
I can't confirm.
So,
Was?
14.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah, we've gotten worse, eh?
we have. That's to be fair.
Well,
At least I'm smart about it.
Zach, I appreciate very much your honesty about that. I don't know too many 14-year-olds who are not.
Yeah, exactly. I know two who definitely weren't.
Definitely work.
Well, you guys have
Definitely weren't smart.
really matured into excellent young men, so you're way
Most of
beyond
I
that
was
now.
smarter as a 14-year-old.
So was I. I had 3.99
I
GPA.
know.
Okay, let's talk about lie number 5. Social transitioning and medical transitioning. That's talking about the chemicals, puberty blockers, cross-sex hormones.
And cutting off your bits and pieces.
Bits and pieces. There, these things are reversible. You can do whatever you want, and just it helps people figure out who they are. No, they're not reversible, and usually once you particularly you start down the path of the medical transitioning with the hormones. Almost 100% of those who start taking the chemicals in their body continue down the path of saying that they're transgender. So social transitioning is when people go by a different name, dress differently, act differently. But if you pretend to be the other sex, that's social transitioning. It's not reversible, because if you're pretending to be the other sex, you're creating personal history. You're not, if you're a boy and you sign up for the girls' soccer team, you can't recreate time on a boys' soccer team because you only did a girls' soccer team. You're creating personal history that cannot be undone. But then look at the consequences of the medical transitioning by giving cross-sex hormones. Do you know what that means? You're giving estrogen to boys and you're giving testosterone to girls. God never intended for girls to have a whole bunch of testosterone or for boys to have a whole bunch of estrogen in their systems. And so if they get the puberty blockers, this is a chemical that was invented to castrate, not physically, but chemically castrate sex offenders. Take a look at what happens, and this is not a full list, when you give people the wrong hormones. In females, it lowers their voice.
Yeah.
And recently I saw a woman talk about the fact that, well, they told me my voice would be deeper, but they didn't say that it would thicken my vocal cords and make them grow. But a female's body doesn't have the space for vocal cords in the throat that a male's body does. And so I've lost the ability to be loud, can't sing, I hurt all the time, and I can't fix this. These are permanent one-way changes in my voice. Females start experiencing, many of them, male pattern baldness. So they start losing the hair up front especially, or the top of their head, and it doesn't come back. Most of it doesn't come back. Decreased bone and muscle growth, so that they get weaker. You've got teenagers who are on crutches and in wheelchairs because their bones are so brittle, they're breaking them, they're in tremendous pain, very much weakened. So their muscles are affected, their bones are affected. Do it long enough and you are infertile. So the boys lose their ability, the sperm stops growing, they can't father children. The girls, their entire female, their ovaries, their uterus just kind of shrinks and shrivels up. and they can't ever have a baby. And of course, when girls think, I hate my body, I hate my breasts, I need to get rid of them. And so I'm sure you've seen the pictures of girls who had top surgery. That's what it's called. It's a double mastectomy. Their breasts are removed, and you've got all these pictures online of topless girls showing off the scar across their chest. You know, women who have mastectomies because of cancer treatments do not have pictures of them showing off their chests as if they were guys at the beach. But this is the badge of honor here.
I haven't seen that, and I'm okay not seeing that.
So,
yeah.
you better see 'em. I'm good with not seeing.
I have like a mental image. It's just like big old scabs right here.
That's part of it. But also, what will happen a lot is girls start saying, I miss my breasts, and nobody told me in a way that I could really understand that if I am able to have babies, I won't be able to nurse them. Because you cut off the breasts, you lose the ability to nurse babies. For girls, they experience vaginal and uterine atrophy, so their female parts just kind of wither up. Girls are starting to come into the emergency rooms of hospitals bleeding profusely if they have sex after getting testosterone, because it has ripped up their bodies below the waist. It does terrible things to them. Have you ever heard of Jazz Jennings? It was on a TV show called, still is doing it, I Am Jazz. This was a little boy whose mother claimed that at 2 years old that he was really a girl, and mom was pushing hard. Oh, okay, baby, we will help you become a girl. And so they didn't want this little boy to go through puberty, because there would be lasting changes in his body. So they gave him puberty blockers from the time he was like 7, 8, 9 years old. And so what happens if you don't go through puberty is you don't develop the secondary sex characteristics of going from a boy's body into a man's body, or a girl's body into a woman's body. And so when this boy was, I believe was 16 years old, had surgery to remove his penis and build a fake vagina, and just the whole thing just fell apart, because they got in there to do the surgery, and all they had to work with was the genitals of a little boy, because there was no transformation that happened during puberty, because there was no puberty. It's so sad. So it prevents the body from maturing sexually, and what that also means is that as an adult, these people are not able to experience sexual pleasure most of the time, because the changes that are supposed to happen during puberty don't happen. But then there's a health issue. There are greater risk of heart attacks. Girls are at greater risk for endometrial cancer. That's the lining of the uterus. Guys are at risk for testicular cancer. A lot of obesity in the transgender population.
Yeah, there's a joke online where it's like, Mom, why does blue hair cause obesity in some people? That's the joke. It's like, yep, that's the one.
That's
the one.
I totally see that.
Yep.
Don't do it.
Okay, so here's something to keep in mind. There are no longitudinal studies on the use of puberty blockers and cross-sex hormones in kids. Everything they're doing is experimental. They don't know what happens long term. And here's the bottom line. Amputating healthy body parts does not create the opposite sex. It mutilates a body. Surgeries cannot be reversed. Are you familiar with the Hippocratic Oath that doctors and healthcare professionals are supposed to take, which is first do no harm? That's the number one rule of a doctor. First do no harm. Well, what they are doing is taking absolutely healthy bodies and mutilating them, and they're doing harm to them. It violates the Hippocratic Oath. Here's the sixth lie. If you don't allow someone to transition, it'll make them commit suicide. So one of the most famous challenges that these gender ideologues make to parents is, do you want a live son or a dead daughter? You know, because if you don't let your kid transition, they're going to commit suicide. Well, the reality is, if you do actual research, there are some, yes, who have committed suicide, but the numbers aren't anywhere near what people are saying they are. And then the studies that they have done have been poorly constructed, poorly analyzed. It's just they want to push their perspective.
Fear-mongering.
Yes, that's exactly right. They did do a study in Sweden several years ago and discovered that those who actually did do the surgery, who transitioned to become a false male, a false female, those who did transition were 19 times more likely to commit suicide than the general population, because they thought it would make them happy, and of course it didn't, because it's a thinking and a worldview disorder. It is not a physical disorder. These are demonic, I believe, satanic lies meant to hurt and wound and deceive people. So I want to land the plane by talking about some of the contributing factors to why transgender ideology has exploded in our culture. First of all, there's been an explosion of the number of girls on the autism spectrum. The number of those with autism has grown exponentially in the last 50 years or so. And girls are very, very susceptible to hearing other girls tell them, this is how you are, this is who you are. And so they take on a transgender identity. Girls especially, although this is true of boys as well, who feel, I don't like myself and I hate my body. The reality is, a lot of people, when they're going through adolescence, really don't like their bodies, and they're having a hard time. It is rocky to go through adolescence, to change from being a boy to a man and change from being a girl to a woman. It's hard. Back when I had small children, I was listening to Dr. James Dobson on the radio a lot, and he used to say, as kids hit adolescence, that don't have any great holy goals, just try to survive, because it's hard. It's hard for a lot of people, not everybody, but a lot of people. So not liking yourself and hating your body is typical of adolescence. It doesn't mean somebody is in the wrong body, because physical and emotional changes are hard on a lot of people as they go through adolescence, but it's especially hard on those with autism, because they're already feeling a disconnect from other people, and it's real easy to feel a disconnect from one's own body. One of the things we know too, that is one of the reasons girls they think they want to be boys, is so many young men have a pornography addiction. They're walking around with the internet in their pocket, and they have access to so much pornography, and it changes the way you see people. And girls hate to be looked at as sexual objects, and they're thinking, if I were a guy, the guys wouldn't be looking at me the way that they are. And so they're fighting against sexual attention that they don't want from boys and men whose minds are warped about what it means to be female, and they've got images in their head that they're comparing to the people in their classes, the people in their church, people on the street. And so a lot of girls are saying, if I become a guy, then I will be safe from the kind of looks that the guys are giving me. Also, social media leads to social contagion, and the reality is that smartphones are disastrous for a lot of people. A lot of people don't know how to limit themselves, and they're addicted. Now there are mental health people trying to figure out, can you equate addiction to social media and the apps on it to like addiction to alcohol or addiction to drugs? So much of what's going on in the brain is very similar. So those who are struggling with transgender generally live online, and you take cell phones away from people who are struggling like that, and so much of the angst just decreases. Another aspect of what's going on here is the discomfort is with gender stereotypes more than gender itself. So if you've got a girl who's really a sporty kind of girl, she's an athlete, she doesn't like pink and purple and sparkly, she doesn't want to get all doodled up with makeup and hair and the whole thing, she just wants to be comfortable. And it doesn't mean she's a guy, it means she's a tomboy and she's not a girly girl. God makes lots of those kinds of girls. Or if you've got a guy that is gifted in music and art and writing and acting and the performing arts, it doesn't mean that he's gay or he really should be a girl. It means he's a gifted kind of guy. Those gender stereotypes are the problem, not the gender. And then finally, there is a lot of money at stake when somebody is a lifelong dependent on hormones, and so often it's follow the money, because once people start taking hormones, they have to keep taking it daily or weekly in order to keep the changes going in their bodies. And so a lot of people are making a lot of money off of those who are medically transitioning. So the last thing I wanted to share is that we are called to speak the truth in love, not cooperate with the delusion or fantasy. And the whole transgender thing is not about the truth. It's not about love. It's a delusion. It's a deception. It's a lie. And we need to speak the truth to each other.